But there he loses connection to the voice. It feels like he's filling the empty hole in the row now. Like a new and big mission start. It's like a lot of energies come together now for a larger truth and a better, stronger power. It's like he's rolling on waves now towards an object which will be the key for final breakthroughs. All the bloodhounds suddenly feel such a deep contact between each other. And they embrace each other, crying many tears. It's like a curse has been broken. It's like a block has been pushed out to open the powers of a mighty circle. It's like a deeper, finer nerve system deep in their hearts and bones has been broken open. And they are shivering in a new sensation. Suddenly there are 2 heavy shots in the air. And 2 of the 7 bloodhounds are falling on the ground. Their mouths are becoming so mean all of a sudden. Anthony is deeply shocked. And they all jump away from the 2 bloodhounds. They really look like devils now. It's like everything in Anthony is shrieking and burning. There were 2 more traitors in the group. And it was about time they would be revealed. It was a big exposure, but Anthony and the other men became very, very afraid. For who else would be a traitor? They were now with 5. But they couldn't trust each other. It was a terrible experience. But in a sense they felt it like a releasement. They were staring at each other, doing research, looking for any traces. It was like the biggest hunt they ever did. And so many questions were rising to their minds. Why didn't they get this information earlier? Weren't they ready for it earlier? Wouldn't they be in the position to handle it when they would hear this life-shocking news earlier? They were desperately scared of new revelations. But it made their senses very sharp. And they started to realize that the traitors were just being used for the plans. Although they blocked and destroyed a lot, it felt like they were walking on a thin wire, surrounded by dangerous electricity, while a wild sea of fire was roaring under them, trying to suck them inside. What could they expect further? The feeling between deep love and deep fear was making them very tired, and it was like they felt a fever inside. They didn't dare to touch each other anymore, becoming very shy and alert. They talked, but they didn't come any further. They couldn't take anything serious. And what if it would all be a big trap? How could they trust each other? It was like a fire was burning away many old emotions and relationships, many trusts and thought patterns. It was like they had been thrown in another middle cocoon. It was paralyzing their souls by a new fear. But they could reach so deep inside now. It was like they could feel their own heartbeat again. A long time of silence followed. Anthony was making connection to himself like never before. It was like so many frustrations and blocks were melting away. Like stings were being pulled out. And he could feel how a new shield was being woven around him. He could let his friends slide away out of his mind. For who knows? Maybe they were his enemies. He could finally sleep deeper and deeper like never before. Reaching deeper, safer, cleaner dreams. It was like he was bathing in a sea of white powders. So white that it hurted his eyes. So fine that he could feel his whole being in every detail. And he could breath out the speed demon, to enter a deeper slow motion. Although it was a traumatic one, a very tragic one, it shocked him into an unlimited sleep. He felt so alone now. But it didn't hurt him. It was like he was floating deep in the seas of healing, touching all the silent beauty, touching all the fragile layers. It was like he was turning into a white fly, like he was in a strange sort of cocoon, too mysterious to describe and understand. It was like his memory didn't exist anymore, for it was just a sick interpretation from a fractured mind, a split mind, while something was sitting in between, holding so many things away, far away. But now he enters it, finally, feeling all the connections between the pieces, like the puzzle is a painting now, and healing is flowing. He doesn't want to go back. He just wants to go deeper and deeper. It's like he is dying, but he feels like coming alive. Finally, he was just turned backwards. He is a white fly now. A white fleeing bloodhound. In pure serenity. And it's like this is all he need. Serene slow-motioned waves of a white ocean of tragedy which woke him up. Which raised him from the death. He was never born. He was dying. It wasn't his cradle in which he slept as baby. It was his grave. This traumatic ocean is so large. Surrounding his whole being. Like his eyes aren't narrow anymore. There he sees a woman walking in a white traumatic dress. Rippling in slow motion. Her face is so white and pure. Her mouth is so small and serene. It awakens more and more tragedy into him. Like a little blossom. Surrounding his heart. Like a fairy tale. Tragic. Yes. For he feels her voice speaking to him about the things he doesn't know yet. Things which will be very hard for him to hear. But which will finally set him free. He loves the tragedy of truth. It is Gaia. The traumatic beauty. Showing him all he needs to know. But it's so deep inside that he can't hear it. Her wind blows in unknown languages. But he knows. One day he'll understand. She is sinking into the sea to become an enormous sea creature. He's shivering. He loves and fears so deep at the same time. And he feels the fever inside. To become health for the first time in his life. He breathes in the white rippling powders. It's like the strike of sleep and medicine. So strange and deep. There's a soft thunder in the air. A white thunder. The heavens are tearing up. And all sorts of strange white creatures are descending into the ocean. There were fights in the oceans. And he found himself eating the meat of white flies. It was straightening his spine, sharpening his sights. Everything was becoming so bright now. You have to eat the meat, a voice was speaking. He was eating the meat of white spiders and 1,000 other sorts of white insects. It was like he was in flames. And while he was drinking from the sea, he got visions of lightning so bright, through which he entered a blinding silver world. The silver took over his body. And it was like all his hairs were rising in strange charge. A silver fly was flying before him. It was like a magnet. He felt floating towards the enormous fly, and the sight became bigger and bigger. It was like losing so many skins. It was a pure insection rebirth. A releasement. And he felt everything in his body was powerfully charged. Especially his mouth. He got sucked inside the enormous fly. Rolling through silver pathways and tunnels. So fast. Like he had never experienced before. This was real speed. It was like his teeth were setting fire. But it was a cold fire. And the speed was getting more and more pumped up. All his sights faded away and became vague. All his screens began to ripple again. And he could put his hand through them. Touching a deeper picture. All these pictures were just covered by a layer of light water. And while the speed was reaching for unlimited grades, also the underlying pictures became liquid and transparent, showing deeper pictures. He was sinking into a new reality, a new space. And it was like he was falling into a bottomless pit. Suddenly he was sitting in a chair while a green fly was staring at him. He had something around him like a black jacket, but there were holes in them. It was like a web. He had waspian eyes. Very sharp and tall eyes, very expressive. Like his eyes were telling 100 of stories. It was like 1,000,000 of things were exploding in his body and stomach. And green fluids were starting to flow. Green hormonal fluids. His body was very transparent. The green fly said, "You need to eat much meat." And he realized that he could eat so fast. He also realized that the fastest eaters would win the war, and that winning speed would only be reached by the deepest holes of liquid slow motion. Like he experienced. It was like his mouth, stomach and further his whole body had so many little mills inside now, in so many different forms and shapes, spinning so fast in so many ways, that he could eat this fast, like he could swallow many oceans in a flash. He realized that creativity and variation were other keys to this speed. It was a wonderful experience. The Wolvian gnats were the most fascinating beings he ever saw. The mock was dripping from their faces. They had such expressive, dignified bodies. They were the princes of satire. They were the pronouncers of apocalypse, leading the orchestras of bitter tragedy. Their vision struck like lightning. It was all flashing between the gnats and the bloodhounds. His friends. But were they really his friends?